Hi, I'm Pranamya and you're watching Pages of the Globe. So if you're new to my channel, essentially I read short stories, sometimes poems. I'll tell you a little bit about the author before. I'll tell you just about their major accomplishments, their legacies, and then I'll also tell you what time they wrote the story. After I read you the story, I'll give you a little bit of historical context as to why the author wrote the story when they did, why they wrote what they did, and I'll explain a little bit about the meaning, how we can apply it today. I'll tell you about the motifs, any symbols present, any themes. I'll give you an in-depth character analysis over every single character present, no matter how many there are. And yeah, that's essentially what I do. If you want to know more, you can always go ahead and check out the pinned video up on my channel. But the short story that I will be reading to you today is called Lather and Nothing Else by Hernando Tellez. Lather and Nothing Else is a very tense short story that takes place in this barber shop during a time of political unrest. And it essentially just explores things like internal conflict, moral responsibility, and the weight of our choices. All within the span of just a few minutes, like maybe 20 minutes max. So it's very interesting. It only has two characters and a very simple setting, but the story creates such intense suspense and it raises very interesting questions. I have to say, this is one of the most interesting stories I feel like I've read on this channel in a while. It doesn't have a lot of like flashy action, but it is so dramatic, I feel like, and the twist, insane. So before I, spoil any more of the story, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the author, Hernando Tellez. He was born in 1908 and he passed away in 1966. He was this Colombian writer, journalist, and political commentator, best known for his social insights and concise prose. He was born, like I said, in Colombia, and he came of age during a time of political tension in Colombia, which very heavily influenced his writing, and it definitely shows up in the story. He had a long and respected career as a journalist and columnist before actually turning to fiction. So he worked for major Colombian newspapers and became known for his very articulate political essays. As for his fiction and style, Lather and Nothing Else, originally Espuma y nada más, is his most well-known story for sure, and it was published in the 1950s. It reflects a lot of his interest in like moral ambiguity and civil conflict, and just like the everyday struggles of our conscience, which were topics that were very relevant to Colombia's very violent political climate during that era. So although not widely known outside of Latin America, he is truly respected in Tellez is truly respected in literary circles for his clarity, his ethical depth, and his ability to capture tension in the emotional tension of political life. His work is commonly taught in high schools, universities, any type of literature course, and it is very much used in discussion of things like ethics, civil war, and Latin American literature. Now, without further ado, let's get on with the video. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment down below which short story you would like me to read next. Lather and Nothing Else by Hernando Tellez. He came in without a word. I was stropping my best razor, and when I recognized him, I started to shake, but he did not notice. To cover my nervousness, I went on honing the razor. I tried the edge with the tip of my thumb and took another look at it against the light. Meanwhile, he was taking off his cartridge-studded belt with a pistol holster suspended from it. He put it on a hook in the wardrobe and hung his cap above it. Then he turned full around toward me and, loosening his tie, remarked, "It's hot as the devil. I want to shave." With that, he took his seat. I estimated he had a 4 days' growth of beard, the 4 days he had been gone on the last foray after our men. His face looked burnt, tanned by the sun. I started to work carefully on the shaving soap. I scraped some slices from the cake, dropped them into the mug, and then added a little lukewarm water and stirred with the brush. The lather soon began to rise. The fellows in the troop must have just about as much beard as I went on, stirring up lather. But we did very well, we caught the leaders. Some of them we brought back dead, others still alive, but they'll all be dead soon. How many did you take? I asked. 14. We had to go pretty far in to find them, but now they're paying for it, and not one will escape, not a single one. He leaned back in the chair when he saw the brush in my hand full of lather. I had not yet put the sheet around him. I was certainly flustered. Taking a sheet from the drawer, I tied it around my customer's neck. He went on talking. He evidently took it for granted that I was on the side of the existing regime. The people must have gotten a scare with what happened the other day, he said. Yes, I replied as I finished tying the knot against his nape, which smelt of sweat. Good show, wasn't it? Very good, I answered, turning my attention now to the brush. The man closed his eyes warily and awaited the cool caress of the lather. I had never had him so close before. The day he ordered the people to file through the schoolyard to look upon the 4 rebels hanging there, my path had crossed his briefly, but the sight of those mutilated bodies kept me from paying attention to the face of the man who had been directing it all, and who I now had in my hands. It was not a disagreeable face, certainly, and the beard, which aged him a bit, was not unbecoming. His name was Torres, Captain Torres. I started to lay on the first coat of lather. He kept his eyes closed. I would love to catch a nap, he said, but there's a lot to be done this evening. I lifted the brush and asked with pretended indifference, A firing party? Something of the sort, he replied, but slower. All of them? No, just a few. I went on lathering his face. My hands began to tremble again. The man could not be aware of this, which was lucky for me, but I wished he had not come in. Probably many of our men had seen him enter the shop, and with the enemy in my house I felt a certain responsibility. I would have to shave his beard just like any other, carefully, neatly, just as though he were a good customer, taking heed that not a single pore should emit a drop of blood, seeing to it that the blade did not slip into the small whorls, taking care that the skin was left clean, soft, shining, so that when I passed back my hand over it, not a single hair should be felt. Yes, I was secretly a revolutionary, but at the same time I was a conscientious barber, proud of the way I did my job, and that 4-day beard presented a challenge. I took up the razor, opened the handle wide, releasing the blade, and started to work downward toward from one sideburn. The blade responded to perfection. The hair was tough and hard, not very long, but thick. Little by little, the skin began to show through. The razor gave out its usual sound as it gathered up layers of soap mixed with bits of hair. I paused to wipe it clean, taking up the stroke once more, went about improving its edge, for I am a painstaking barber. The man, who had kept his eyes closed, now opened them, put a hand from under the sheet, felt to the part of his face that was now emerging from the lather, and said to me, "Come at 6 o'clock this evening to the school." "Will it be like the other day?" I asked, stiff with horror. "It may be even better," he replied. "What are you planning to do?" "I'm not sure yet, but we'll have a good time." Once more he leaned back and shut his eyes. I came closer, the razor on high. "Are you going to punish all of them?" I timidly ventured. "Yes, all of them." The lather was drying on his face. I must hurry. Through the mirror I took a look at the street. It appeared about as usual. There was the grocery shop with 2 or 3 customers. Then I glanced at the clock, 2:30. The razor kept descending. Now, from the other sideburn downward, it was a blue beard, a thick one. He should let it grow like some poets or some priests. It would suit him well. Many people would not recognize him. And that would be a good thing for him, I thought, as I went gently all over the throat line. At this point you really had to handle your blade skillfully, because the hair, while came here, minutely in this area, and let out a tiny drop of blood. A good barber like myself stakes his reputation on not permitting that to happen to any of his customers, and this was indeed a special customer. How many of ours had he sent to their death? How many had he mutilated? It was best not to think about it. Torres did not know I was his enemy. Neither he nor the others knew it. It was a secret shared by very few, just because that made it possible for me to inform the revolutionaries about Torres's activities in the town and what he planned to do every time he went on one of his raids to hunt down rebels. So it was going to be very difficult to explain how it was that I had him in my hands and then let him go in peace, alive and clean-shaven. His beard now had almost entirely disappeared. He looked younger, several years younger than when he had come in. I suppose that always happens to men who enter and leave barber shops. Under the strokes of my razor, Torres was rejuvenated. Yes, because I am a good barber, the best in town, and I say this in all modesty. A little more lather here under the chin, on the Adam's apple, right underneath the great vein. How hot it is! Torres must be sweating just as I am. But he is not afraid. He is a tranquil man who is not even giving thought to what he will do to his prisoners this evening. I, on the other hand, polishing his skin with this razor but avoiding the drawing of blood, careful with every stroke, I cannot keep my thoughts in order. Confound the hour he entered into my shop. I am a revolutionary, but not a murderer, and it would be so easy to kill him. He deserves it. Or does he? What is to be gained by it? Nothing. And still others keep coming, and the first kill the second, and then those kill the next, and so on until everything becomes a sea of blood. I could cut his throat, so swish, swish. He would not even have time to moan, and with his eyes shut, he would not even see the shine of the razor or the gleam in my eye. But I am shaking like a regular murderer. From his throat, a stream of blood would flow onto the sheet, over the chair, down my hands, and onto the floor. I would have to close the door. The blood would go flowing along the floor, warm and edible, not to be stanched, until it reached the street, like a small scarlet river. I am sure that with a good strong blow, a deep cut, he would feel no pain. He would not suffer at all. And what would I do then with the body? Where would I hide it? I would have to flee, leave all this behind, take shelter far away, very far away. But they would follow until they caught up with me. The murder of Captain Torres. He slit his throat while he was shaving him. What a cowardly thing to do. And others would say the avenger of our people, a name to remember, my name here. He was the town barber. No one knew he was fighting for our cause. And so which will it be, murderer or hero? My fate hangs on the edge of this razor blade. I can turn my wrist slightly, put a little bit more pressure on the blade, let it sink in. The skin will yield like silk, like rubber, like the strop. There is nothing more tender than a man's skin, and the blood is always there, ready to burst forth. But I don't want to be a murderer, no sir. You came in to be shaved, and I do my work honorably. I don't want to stain my hands with blood, just with lather and nothing else. You're an executioner. I am only a barber. Each one to his job. That's it. Each one to his job. The chin was now clean, polished, and soft. The man got up, looked at himself in the glass. He ran his hand over the skin and felt its freshness, its newness. Thanks, he said. He walked over to the wardrobe for his belt, for his pistol, and his cap. I must have been very pale, and I felt my shirt soaked with sweat. Torres finished adjusting his belt buckle, straightened his hand in its holster, and smoothed his hair mechanically, put on his cap. From his trousers pocket, he took some coins to pay for the shave. As he started towards the door, on the threshold, he stopped for a moment and turning towards me, he said, They told me you would kill me. I came to find out if it was true. But it's not easy to kill. I know what I'm talking about. The end. Alright, so that was the short story Lather and Nothing Else by Hernando Tellez. Before I start with my analysis, I'm, like always, just going to give you a quick overview of the story. So this is a short story written by the Colombian journalist and author Hernando Tellez. It was first published in 1950, and it was set in a time of political unrest and violence, and it resembling the La Violencia period in Colombia, which was essentially just this decade-long civil conflict between the liberal and conservative parties. So the story focuses on a moral and psychological conflict that is faced by this barber during a seemingly ordinary encounter with this client who actually turns out to be the enemy. So what is happening in this story, right? The entire story is taking place inside this barber shop. And this military officer, Captain Torres, enters to get a shave. And the barber, who is secretly a rebel sympathizer, recognizes the captain as someone who is responsible for killing fellow rebels. So the central tension of the story, the central conflict, revolves around whether or not the barber will kill the officer while shaving him, or will he uphold his professional duty as a barber and just let him go unharmed and well shaved. The story is told in first person from the barber's point of view, and it really immerses us in his inner thoughts. When you start the story, you don't exactly know what's going on. You might be a little confused, but as the story progresses, you truly learn a lot about the way that this barber is thinking, and it really puts a lot of issues into perspective for you. So what are some themes we see here? First of all, the obvious one of just moral conflict and then professional ethics. So the most prominent theme in this story that I saw was the tension between someone's personal morals and their professional duty. So the barber is torn between his political loyalties as a rebel and his identity as a professional and he's obviously very, very much into his job, and he truly values precision when it comes to shaving and ensuring that the skin is perfect and care and ethics. The phrase lather and nothing else, when he's talking about that, when he references lather and nothing else, it shows it's almost like a symbol for his ultimate choice, right? Because he ends up not killing the captain. He decides to remain true to his role as a barber and not cross into violence. Another theme we see in this story is the nature of courage. The story kind of questions what is true bravery, right? Is it braver to kill a man who has caused suffering, or to resist the urge for revenge and act with restraint? This barber, in this scenario, believes that courage lies in doing what's right, even if it's the harder choice. But as I was reading the story, the first time I read the story, in my mind, I was at first I was yeah, definitely, just kill him now. This person is obviously a bad person who has caused the killing of a lot of people. I think it makes sense to kill him now. But as I read more and more about why the barber was doing what he's doing and how he said, after him, others will come, and I might be lauded as some hero, but others will think of me as a criminal. And I realized even if I was in his position, I would never be able to kill someone, and so I understood where he was coming from there. I think that leads me into the next theme or theme subject, which is the thin line between being civil and being violent. So the setting itself is very it's almost, I don't want to say boring, but it's very mundane. It's very peaceful. It's a barber shop. So however, the potential for violence is immense. So this juxtaposition underscores how fragile being civil and civility can be, especially in times of war or political unrest. I mean, he's coming in, and as far as we know, until the end, we think that Captain Torres has no idea what's going on, right? And he's going into this barber shop, and in his mind, we assume, towards the end, we realize that's not the case. But in the beginning, we think that, this man has no idea what's happening, and he's just going in to get a shave. However, inside the mind of the barber, there's so many thoughts going at once about, should I kill him? Should I not kill him? And that just that's so insane, because you're thinking about, this is a barber shop. This is where people go for a shave. And while this is happening, someone is debating a murder. Now, the last theme subject I want to talk about, even though there are actually quite a lot here, is identity and duality. So both of these characters are representing dual roles. The barber is this rebel sympathizer, right? But he's also a very meticulous professional person. The officer is the customer, and he is a very brutal enforcer, and he is like a leader of the other side. And I don't want to say he's like impulsive or not meticulous, because I have no idea how he kills someone or how he organizes any of that. But just the way he talks about, murder and killing of rebels seems very almost haphazard. So there's an obvious like character foil almost there between the two main characters. Now I want to talk a little bit about like a character analysis, a quick characterization, if you may. So we see two characters here, right? The barber and Captain Torres. So the barber, he is never named. He is this very like complex character, and he is obviously driven by like integrity, but he has a lot of inner conflict going on. I would also say he's a very like reflective person. Like he has a great deal of self-reflection. His dedication to his craft as a barber, and also his internal struggle of, should I follow my thinking, like my political ideology or my political duty. Those are the kinds of things that kind of humanize him to us a lot. He's not this big revolutionary who's like driven by hatred, but he's just this man who is caught up between duty and ideology. Then we have Captain Torres, and though initially he is presented as a villain, he is not flat. By the end of it, it's revealed that he too is testing the limits of morality. In the end, he says, I was told that you were going to kill me if I came in here, and so I came in here to see if you would. So he too is, it suggests that even those in power can question their actions. His awareness of the danger adds a layer of psychological gamesmanship to the encounter. So I want to go back to the historical and political context of the story. So it is set in the backdrop of like guerrilla warfare and political assassinations. And the story indirectly reflects Colombia's very, very violent mid-20th century. So the barber kind of represents the common man who is caught in the middle. He's powerless, but at the same time, he possesses agency through moral choices. And the author kind of critiques the cycle of violence while also portraying the emotional toll it takes on ordinary people. As a conclusion, I want to talk a little bit about the ending of the story and like kind of explain that. So in the final lines of the story, literally the final lines, Captain Torres, he gets up calmly after the shave, he pays a barber, and then he reveals that, they told me, the exact line is, they told me you'd kill me, I came to find out. So this one sentence has essentially flipped the entire story on his head. So what just happened, right? Apparently the captain knew that the barber might be a rebel sympathizer, but he still chose to sit in his chair, unarmed and vulnerable. So he tested, the barber, and he risked his own life to see if the barber would kill him. This turns what seemed like this one-sided moral dilemma, right, of the barber saying, deciding whether to kill, into a mutual psychological showdown. I mean, the barber, yes, was having his own internal struggle about should I kill, should I not kill, but the captain was testing whether the barber would kill or not kill. So what does this mean? First of all, it talks a lot about power and control. Captain Torres was essentially in complete control the entire time, not physically, but mentally. By knowing he put his life in danger, he almost shows a kind of like, I don't want to say confidence, but yes, confidence and fearlessness. And this is not in any way me sympathizing with him. This is not in any way me painting him in a good light. I'm just saying he made the barber perhaps feel like he had power, when in reality, at the end of the day, the captain was the one conducting the real test. Both of these men are playing a very dangerous moral game. I mean, the barber, he wants to be a good man. He doesn't want to be a murderer. But he has a very valid reason for killing the captain. The captain wants to see if his enemies have the same capacity for violence than he does, or if they are like morally better than him. And this ending kind of highlights how like our personal ethics can become a battlefield. It's very similar to a war zone. Something I really want to talk about here is like restraint versus revenge. By choosing the belief of lather and nothing else, the barber is choosing restraint, and the captain, you could say he respects this, or maybe at least he acknowledges it. You know, the ending really makes you realize that, yes, killing could be easy, and not killing was the harder, not killing was the harder, more powerful choice. I mean, the barber is also here proving that he is not like the men he opposes. The story's ending suggests that true courage does not lie in killing, but choosing not to, even when you have every reason and opportunity. It also reveals that both sides in a conflict can see humanity in the enemy, and how trust, even if dangerous, can expose deeper truths, not about character, honor, or morality. So at the end of the day, the barber essentially wins. That is the analysis that is available online, I suppose. But right now, I would like to give a little bit of my own thoughts about the story, because I would actually say I disagree with this analysis. I don't think it really has anything to do about true courage lies and not killing, or like choosing not to kill, and that's the more powerful choice, and yada yada. I think truly at the end of the day, the story is just about how there was this barber who was an ordinary man, you know, and he truly believed in the rebels' ideology. And the way the story has been painted to us, it seems like the rebels have good reason to be, you know, angry for whatever reason it is. It seems like they are the good here. They are the good people here, and the captain is on the bad people's side. And this entire time, the barber's like, okay, should I kill him? Should I not kill him? Because if I don't kill him, then, you know, people are going to ask me why I didn't kill this guy. But if I do kill him, you know, people are going to ask me why I killed this guy. So it shows how this ordinary man is getting caught up in this struggle. However, towards the end, at the very end, we realize that he never had any power in the first place. You know, had he killed this captain, first of all, like he said before, the captain would have been replaced almost immediately. And then more importantly, he would have been caught and killed, because as soon as the captain doesn't come out, it's obvious that people were watching them, because everyone on the captain's side assumed that he was going to die. So there were probably spies watching the two interactions and ensuring that, you know, the captain doesn't die. And if he does, the barber is immediately selected as a rebel and killed. And so at the end of the day, the barber never had a solid choice. The barber never had a good place to go. You know, if he kills the captain, not much changes within the party itself, you know, within the actual regime itself, and he gets killed. If he doesn't kill the captain, then for the rest of his life, perhaps, he will have to live with the fact that he, you know, had a very, very terrible human being's life in his hands, and he didn't do anything then. And also people will ask him, you know, people will tell him, why didn't you kill him? This person was responsible for killing my son, my husband, my wife, my daughter, my nephew, my niece, my grandfather, whatever it may be. So I think, you know, a lot of people are saying the story's ending suggests that true courage lies not in killing, but in choosing not to. However, I think the story just kind of goes to show that the ordinary person in such types of war cannot win. You know, there's no true winning in any type of political unrest, any type of war, because there's always going to be, you know, it's always going to be a lose-lose situation. And yes, you know, the barber showed restraint. However, I think that this story, you know, it doesn't really provide any easy answers for us. It really forces us to reflect on what it means to be honorable in a dishonorable world. You know, because this barber did choose to be honorable, but now us as readers have to decide, was it the correct choice or not? Was it right to be honorable in this moment or not? And I would say yes. You know, after reading everything that happened, I would say yes. You know, it made sense, because Anyway, had he even killed that captain, he himself would have been killed anyway. And so there is that. However, others might say, he had his chance to make his mark on the world and he didn't. Again, I think that is truly just, the conclusion. The title's phrase, lather and nothing else. Others' analysis say that it is a quiet, powerful declaration of peace over vengeance. However, I truly just think this phrase is a way of saying that is all that the ordinary person can do. All they can do is do their job and move on with their life because they can't afford to take such big risks. This almost reminds me of something that a lot of people were talking about. If you guys remember, at the height of after the bombing in the Gaza Strip, after the bombing in Palestine, there were several protests going around, especially in colleges. Specifically, I want to point out the ones in Columbia. And there were, and not even Columbia, but just like many colleges. And, there were a lot of people being like, oh, I went to this protest, however, they took away my diploma, or they didn't let me graduate, or whatever, this happened. And so for some of them, it's okay because, they come from very rich families. They can afford to put such things at risk, their graduation, their diploma, whatever it may be at risk. However, for others, it was like, I'm the first person in my family to go to college. And now, if I go to this protest, I am putting all of that at risk. However, to me, it is the right thing to do. So what should I do now? Should I go to the protest, or should I, and perhaps risk, my, everything my parents have worked for, or should I do the maybe morally unright thing, like the morally wrong thing, but, perhaps save my education? I think that is a way that we can connect this to today. But yeah, that's it for me. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment down below which short story you would like me to read next.